Terry Poplava serves as Director of Marketing, Sales, and Customer Service for Our Sunday Visitor, Offertory Solutions, and American Church Incorporated, where he works in product development, marketing communications, stewardship services, customer service, and sales. He joined our Sunday Visitor in 2007, and Mr. Poplava has worked with dioceses and parishes. His work includes presentations and workshops on best practices for online giving and for parish websites, in addition to optimizing parish tools to enhance offertory. Terry received his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and English at the University of Notre Dame and an MBA from Clemson University. Mr. Poplava is active at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Hartsville, South Carolina. So I'd like to welcome my supervisor, Terry Poplava.
If you would observe this little bit of depiction of who we are as a company, sometimes it's not easy to know about the breadth of what OSV does. We were founded in 1912 by Father John Francis Knoll in northeastern Indiana, who found himself in a very unfriendly environment, a lot of immigrants, a lot of anti-Catholicism, and he felt very strongly that it was important to keep people understanding what's accurate about the Catholic faith, what Catholics believe and why. He found himself, in fact, he took himself, I think he was redheaded for those of you that hear about that personality type, into tent revivals, and he would stand up in the revival and argue what was inaccurate about what they were saying about Catholics. From that, this passionate guy founded this company to serve the church, which is still our mission today, and he started the OSV News Weekly then in 1912, followed it shortly thereafter by bringing offering envelopes to the Catholic Church, and since then we've grown into a set of organizations who cover these types of products and services. Offertory Solutions is really about helping parishes and dioceses engage your parishioners through enhancing offertory and improving communications. You can see the tools there. Our publishing and curriculum businesses are our books, pamphlets, periodicals, ebooks, our education series from K through 8 and adult education, our Vacation Bible School materials, walking with you from the time you are born until the time you pass away with helpful, interesting, useful, timely content. And then while we are in place to offer these products and services, we do send a portion of our operating income to the portfolio that funds the OSV Institute, and we grant money back to you, to the Catholic Church, for catechesis, evangelization, vocations, and advancing the culture of parish life. It's been typically about $3 million a year. In the last 5 years, it's been $15 million that we've granted back to Catholic causes across the country. So we're passionate about who we are. We're passionate about helping you in any way that we possibly can. Let's talk about stewardship and start with this quote that I know you're familiar with, but I find it to be important as a reminder to each of us individually and as staff. From St. Teresa, I'd like to read it. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. Yours are the only hands by which he can do his work. Yours are the only feet by which he can go around the world. Yours are the only eyes through which his compassion can shine forth upon a troubled world. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. Consider this, the importance of each of us as an individual contributor to our community. And I think it's so important that we collectively also help to bring all of our parishioner base along so that each person recognizes and reflects on the special gifts that they have. Still today, even though we in this conference so often recognize this and talk about it, people don't think about it. They don't remember who they are. They don't think about their special individual giftedness. Now, I make this point because I think in the end, the more we grasp this and understand it and invite people to be part of our parish with their gifts, in using their gifts, the more successful we can be. So the more we can tap into it, the better we are overall. I'll remind you that in the bishop's pastoral letter and the disciples' response to it, there was a summary of 7 points for success. And I'll be building on some of these and referring back to them, but it's so important that it was a foundation in what the bishops were saying years ago. All of these points that we talk about throughout this week: personal witness, commitment of the leadership, which I will be coming back to, hospitality, evangelization, and outreach, communication, and education, keeping people abreast of who we are and what we're doing and what we're accomplishing, recruiting and training and recognizing gifts of time and talent, preferably as the individual gifts that we recognize in ourselves, stewardship of treasure equally and at the same time, represented as in its connection to our spirituality, and then accountability and clear reflection of our financials. These points are all components of being successful as a parish. And yet we still have challenges. One of the challenges that was clearly pointed out was reflected in the study that was done about a year ago by the Institute for Church Life at the University of Notre Dame. It's a series of questions that they were asking and trying to understand about Catholic generosity, or in this case, perhaps the lack thereof. When you look at what this says, and I'm sorry it's a little unclear, I had to clip it out of their PDF. The question that is so pertinent, my spiritual life, involves using my money faithfully to please God. How well do we make the connection between our financial giving and our spirituality? Well, here's what the data says. This is non-religious, Catholic, mainline Protestant, and evangelical Protestant. This dark blue on the left is strongly agree, and the bright green on the right is strongly disagree. What you see is we Catholics are slightly better than the non-religious. Isn't that great? And yet we all know it's not because we're not doing wonderful things and having major impact. I propose to you that a part of it, a large part of it, is that we're failing to tell our parishioners about it, that we're failing to celebrate it, that we're failing to be clear about what the good work our parish is doing. So I'll come back to that point. But the evangelical Protestants do a great job. Worth observing. I pulled back out the data from Pew Research in part because Sherry Waddell's book on forming intentional disciples. Are you familiar with the book and the working documents that she has become very popular? I think it's also very challenging, particularly for the average person who isn't there in their faith. And that's what Pew said. This is what Sherry is so concerned about. 32% of people no longer identify as Catholic who were Catholic, and yet there's another larger number, I think this is 38%, occasionally or seldom at Mass. And then we have smaller percentages, 5% in that measurement were intentional disciples. So, what does that say to us? Part of what I want to talk about today is, it's going to take me another slide. I'll come back to that in a second. There's another point that's made by a non-Catholic author that you may have seen before, Cliff Christopher, and I'm pretty sure, I know he has done some presentations at dioceses, has published 2 books that I'm using as part of the input for us. And this one was Not Your Parents' Offering Plate. He asks, the major point is, why do members give? So why do they give of themselves or financially? This is about all gifts. They believe in the mission. If we go back to the Notre Dame study, they have to recognize the mission and know what it is, and in order to believe in it and feel like they belong there. They have a high regard for the leadership, and they believe the organization is fiscally responsible. We saw that in the bishop's pastoral letter about accountability. He has another, I think, challenging question that he asks ministers. What is the purpose of church? His answer, to change lives. That's a broad answer, but I think it's a very good one. St. Augustine reflects this. St. Matthew reflects this. I'm sure we have other scripture that reflect this. Go and preach the gospel to change lives. That is a purpose. In the end, that really is what we want to do. We want to form people to be disciples. Cliff's question is, where is the evidence that you have changed lives? And if you aren't demonstrating it in any way as a church, then why do you expect people to give? Why do you expect people to think you're successful? Where's the result? And I think that's a very useful question to ask ourselves. We have the results. Are we talking about them? I'm not talking about financial results. I'm talking about people's lives being changed, youth being educated, people being saved, the poor being treated well, all of the things we do in addition to our individual formation. Where's the evidence? How can we celebrate that? He asked one more question, too, that I think is interesting, and that is, he uses a great example. Why do people give to Harvard? It's not the first endowment that I think is in need of money, right? Because they believe in the product, the training and the people that come out of there and the impact they have. So it's about the results of what's going on. He has another book he called Rich Church, Poor Church, where he elaborates on the same point. I just pulled together some of the terms he uses to describe a church that operates from a sense of abundance in comparison to a church that operates from a sense of poverty. And we're guilty of some of the same things in our parishes, but in abundance, we're talking about mission and lives and service and discipleship in Jesus, and we're being compelling, and we're talking about how we are influencing and changing lives, and how we can impact the world and where we're going as an organization. And the poor church is talking about the facility and the money and surviving and what's going on over the next week or two. So, I think some of that may be familiar as well. Sometimes it's not that the conditions aren't there, because they are. It's how we describe the need and the impact and how we make use of our resources. I also want to spend a moment on parishioner gifts. So we talked about giftedness with St. Teresa. I'm sure you're probably familiar with the StrengthsFinder stuff, the Gap Clifton StrengthsFinder. It's not the only tool, but I'm fond of it because I think it's very positive and very understandable. So I use it as my example here. My point is getting staff and parishioners to start to think about their gifts so they become aware of them. So however we do that, that will help us celebrate who we are and help people understand how they can come to the table and be useful and helpful in the parish in a way that they feel good about. So, when they're talking about with the StrengthsFinder engagement and moving engagement to commitment, so we're opening the door to commitment, and then the outcomes are, invitations, serious giving, participation in church. And I use two really great examples of dioceses and parishes that are using this. The Archdiocese of Seattle has been rolling this program out for some time. They have 3 phases to it in what they call their Strengthened Church, and they started with doing StrengthsFinder and then moved on to the ME25 assessment for parishes. They've then gone into Good Leaders, Good Shepherds training for pastors, and now they're into Tending the Talents for staff and pastors. So it's an idea of bringing people's giftedness together and thinking about both business planning as well as spiritual training. If you go to their Archdiocesan website, you find all of these resources available to learn about how you as parish or you as individual can participate. I'm sure you've seen Monsignor Bill Hansen and his presentations from St. Gerard Majella. They've also been at it for quite some time. What I did here is just because they published their last ME25 results on the internet, and this is, I cut it and pasted it just to say what they're looking at over time is, where is the level of engagement of our parishioners? Where are they in terms of the benefit of the work that we're doing, that they recognize their strengths, that they recognize that we are a community, that we're working together, they understand what we're doing, and we're moving forward. So this is it's tracking over time, are we getting better? But what they've experienced, and what the parishes in Seattle have experienced, is a great sense of abundance. St. Gerard Majella had started from a sense of not being able to accomplish what they needed to. They didn't really have enough funding. Now they have expanded their programs, and they're looking at new things to do, and they're looking at how they can impact the community in bigger ways. A remarkable transformation through starting with this tool. A lot of that was based in research done in Growing an Engaged Church. Are you familiar with that book from Al Winsman? It's been out there a little while as well, but what Al was talking about is what does it mean to be engaged? And I think this is helpful to us as well. The lowest level is, what do I get? And so many people of our parishioners, and in fact in some of our other faith communities, that's where the level they operate at. If I don't get what I need, then I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm not entertained. But also we find many people in what do I give? What can I give? So that's a step up. What can I give to my parish? But what Winsman suggests is that there's a couple of deeper levels that are so important. The next one being, do I belong here? Are my gifts and talents and what I am, do I belong? Am I part of this community? Do I feel like I'm part of it and making it progress and participating in it? Very important. And I think often we show up at Mass and we leave and we don't know really how we fit and we don't have a sense of it, so it's hard to say you really belong. So belonging is a very important component of this, which leads to the top level. And I love the top level because I like to look at things going forward. My strengths tend to be strategic and futuristic. Where are we going? So let me ask you this question to consider your parishes. Do you or do your parishioners know where you're going as a parish? Put in terms I like, we're at point A today. What's point B? I'm not talking about a lengthy strategic plan. Those are important, and this could be in the context of it, but just what's our next step? What do we want to be? Who do we want to affect? Do you know that? I don't know it in my parish. And the way to get people involved and engaged is that they belong, and then we're headed in a direction. Pick the direction. It should be mission focused and focused on your parish mission. So, and also, if you look at the books that Chuck Zeck has published, his Why Catholics Don't Give and What Can Be Done About It, followed by Best Practices of Stewardship. I highlighted a couple of the data points that he brings out in those studies in the yellow box at the top. Again, saying some of the same things about how we use our money and how we report on who we are as a community. Accountability, those parishes that use an open forum on finance, in that terminology, my understanding of it is that there's open reporting. It can be a meeting, but also it can be done in print, but that you do it openly, show a 29% increase in contributions in comparison to those parishes who don't share that information. And we had some very interesting discussions while we were here at the conference about how you should share that information. Sometimes just a P&L statement may not be the most meaningful way. There's better ways. The second thing he says, though, is a parish newsletter is another very important component. And at the time he wrote this, I think he was thinking primarily about a printed and mailed piece, which you can still do. But what he emphasized was that delivered into the household of the parishioner, not the bulletin, not waiting for them to be at Mass to pick this thing up and possibly read it during the homily. That never happens. I hadn't thought of that until just now. They show parishes who regularly communicate who they are, what sacraments have happened, what's happening at the parish, and keeping people aware of what is happening, show greater contributions, greater service time, greater spiritual time, greater outreach. Simple things, but it's about communication, about telling people who we are. So our suggestion, then, using some of this background, is that, first of all, what I was going to say after that Pew Research study is we think an important task for us to consider is moving people from occasional to regular Catholics. Take the first step to get people excited about the parish and to show up so they're there enough so they can begin to become interested in their faith. And then, of course, our task is to continue to move them along that continuum. That's fairly consistent with what Gallup was saying, and we think that the annual plan, in effect, is at a minimum a helpful tool to accomplish this next step. So, to the extent you understand this, we're trying to say here, to the extent you understand parishioner giftedness, but you also have thought about the biggest next step for the parish, the most important things that you accomplish that are meaningful to the people in the parish. We have hundreds and hundreds of ministries that we do at our parishes, and they're all wonderful. But we don't have to talk about all of them all the time, because as we all know, if you try to see everything, then it almost loses its impact. So pick some things that are most interesting and celebrate what they are. So put that story together. We're talking about outreach. We are thinking about who finds that as a very important component of our parish. In the end, we probably want to do a building, and we probably need money for that, but we don't want to. The building isn't for the building's sake. The building is because we want to house people who are homeless. So that's what we want to talk about. And then let's put all the pieces together to tell that story and be consistent about telling that story. The Notre Dame study concludes something very similar. So they did this independently, and what they concluded, when you look at this, is if parishioners understand themselves to be part of the planning and vision for their parish, where are we going? And when they become excited about all of the good things that the money can accomplish, them, it empowers them and engenders a sense of ownership. And they say the research suggests that parish leaders will benefit from the development of collaborative parish cultures in which service and mission inspire a vision of opportunities for charitable giving that can dramatically improve the church, change people's lives, and transform the world. How great if we celebrate who we are, the kind of transformation we can accomplish. We have a suggested kind of timeline. It's the concept that we just included in there for use. What we're suggesting is that on a regular basis, we're saying annually because it's convenient, cross-functional staff. I don't know how often the stewardship coordinators are together with the website person, are together with the business manager, and together with whoever's doing the other communications pieces and the pastor, and talking about how do we tell our story next. So we're suggesting come together. And this, the finance committee too, lay and staff, leaders, and talk about what is that next step, and think about then how do we tell that story? How do we turn it into pictures and a story, content? And then implement the tools. In our case, we think about ones that are most familiar to us that we offer, but this should impact your envelope designs every cycle. It should impact your website content. It should cause you to do an update to your electronic giving programs. And if you think you're going to do some kind of commitment, like an increased offertory or stewardship of treasure, it should be all about the story that you're telling as parish and where you want to go next. Not about the money, but about the story. And we know that we can take that step further. So once we get here and get started on this and are running it regularly, we can then have a lot more opportunity to bring people along and catechize and form over time. So more people, when they read Sherry Waddell's book, understand it and embrace it. There's a number of pieces that come together. Our suggestion then is that the pieces you have in your parish, which so often are done individually and independently of each other, can be stronger and have synergy when you think about them working together. So I'm going to talk about those pieces now. A little bit, just a couple of points. Offering envelopes. You have offering envelopes at your parish? When's the last time you changed the design on your offering envelope? Anyone recently? When's the last time pastor stood up and mentioned the scripture on the offering envelope during the homily and said, oh, I was just looking at this. This informed my homily about this passage that was there. How many of you have pictures of your parishioners on your offering envelopes? This is a tool that's been around for 100 years, and it's been around so long we don't think about it at all, generally. Now, it's agree and understand we're transforming as people and demographics. However, for something that has a process that you know how to do, you don't have to think about it anymore. It happens, you know what to do, it goes, it's reliable, it happens every month in the parishioner households. Why don't we use it strategically? Just a question for you to consider. You can put images of people. You can put images. This is a youth group contribution envelope, special collection envelope. Certainly you can use scripture or some of the series examples. I suggest this. We've been giving a lot of thought to this, and I guess I get personally excited about it because as we introduced our electronic giving offering, online giving from our Sunday Visitor, I thought, like many do, that, oh, well, we're just going to move people to electronic and that's the end of it, and that's, it's faster and more convenient and consistent. They don't have to remember to use their envelope. But the more I have worked with you and talked with you, I've thought, well, there's a lot of people that we could still touch. If they're not getting something from us, how are they in touch with us? They maybe, we love the fact that people show up. What about the ones that don't show up? Do we have a great way we're always in contact with them? Well, this is one reliable way of always doing that. And let me just give you some examples. So what can you use your offering envelope for? Well, obviously for contributions, but you can use it for engagement. Part of this about these pictures is about celebrating who we are. Our story that we're telling on our website and through inserted materials in our envelopes is that's what's on our envelope too, so people recognize themselves in action. Staying in touch with people who are either disengaged or have become inactive, for prayer and comfort for people who are shut in, for evangelization and or education. And how? If your staff is capable, split the lists of people by those functions. Make it a different design. Send them a different envelope. The envelope happens to have a stickum and a flap on it. Stop thinking about it as an envelope to put money in. I had one business manager say to me, we've stopped sending it to people who are inactive because we don't want the first thing they see from us to be something asking for money. Make it for prayer. Put the design on there that says, please contact the parish. This is a prayer for you. If you are in need at all, please call us so that we can help you. Again, all I say is, and you can do different designs on those different lists, and you can plan a whole series of inserted cards or letters. Part of your communications from the parish can use this tool, you already have it, to tell your story. You don't have to do it necessarily through all separate pieces. And so I just ask, why would we minimize the envelope program or ignore it? Why wouldn't we make it the best thing it possibly can be? And while we're at it, coordinating it with our electronic options. Online giving. Everyone have online giving at their parish? Some kind of electronic giving? We're seeing that the results always are resulting in a streamlined cash flow, consistent cash that has been raising overall offertory as a result of that, if for no other reason than those of us who don't always get to Mass, frankly, don't always make up that gift. That alone makes a difference. We've worked very hard to try to go back to parishes and compare before and after. In every case, we see a significant percentage increase. It's a way to keep people on board. A couple of tips on making your program successful. Make sure you're planning it as part of your offertory and connecting with Mass, connecting with sacrificial giving. Suggest assigning a lay leader or a leader who is passionate about it, whose job it is to bring people along and be excited about using the tool. Set a goal and also be grateful. In fact, be grateful for people who are giving using the envelope or online giving or cash or any of their gifts, and use that as part of homilies. Don't forget to promote your online giving and make it a component of every other piece. Another part of celebrating. So, the point is telling the story and celebrating the parish. The website is an obvious great choice for it. Very important that the website be very up to date. And why focus on it? Well, it's not just to have our Mass times and contact information. We're talking about attracting people who are looking for a parish. We're also talking about informing people who are parish members about our faith and about who we are. So the audience is all of those people. Some of the things that we've worked hard to think about is identifying yourself as part of the greater diocesan community, making sure people can find you through a map, having information about the Catholic faith on the site, and probably dynamic information about the Catholic faith. The reason I go through all of those points, though, is assuming now that you're with me in this concept that we have done our planning session to think about what we're going to do next and what we want to celebrate, that then the imagery on our envelope changes to reflect that, and the imagery on our website changes to reflect that same story, and the information we're providing to our parishioners in communications is the impact of the programs and services that we offer, in formation or in outreach. Put it all out there across all the channels. This is a great example in the Archdiocese of Seattle Assumption Church. We are called is the mission statement for the church. Their website reflects the same kind of activities that they have on their envelope design. They're going to keep their iconic tower, but they're going to swap out these pictures every 6 months so that they have different parishioners on the envelope, so that they're getting people thinking about who the parish is and they're talking about it. One other point in using electronics, and just wrapping up the electronics section here a little bit, if you have not seen Scott Landry, who has been at our booth, and his book is there. He recently published this book called Growing the Church Through New Media, Transforming Parish Communications. It is a practical guide to evangelizing through media. So while you're in the process of trying to bring people along, he's got great ideas about how to use all aspects of media, from the website, through online giving, through all of the social media kind of aspects. A great book on that. It's available at our booth, and Scott Landry is still around to talk with you. Increased offertory, stewardship of treasure, commitment. We're finding this has become a great opportunity to catalyze the parishioner staff and bring you together to form that plan that I talked about. So often we can't make ourselves just get together and do the planning session, so sometimes a sense of urgency or need or some kind of program to force us to think about what we want to accomplish will do that. And we're finding the increased offertory that we've been doing has had tremendous results. So, but we want to plan it. It needs to be part of our stewardship message, and it needs to be timed at the appropriate time with our stewardship message, and it needs to be about engaging and forming. So that's all critical. If there's another underlying reason that there are issues at the parish, then this is not necessarily the tool to fix those. This is the tool to propel the parish forward, or get a new start, or to recover possibly from some challenges. Just on that point, if you're in a debt situation, or if you're paying, we have many who are paying down debt. Again, the point isn't we're paying off our debt. That's a wonderful thing. The point is, because we're paying this off, we can continue to train our youth, impact the poor, become better disciples. It's the reason for it. That's the story that we think, and that's the story that we recommend goes out with any kind of statement about who you are for an increased offertory program. So we think about this, the benefits aren't necessarily money. It's about renewing commitment, establishing commitment, and renewing a connection and engagement, and setting a direction for the parish. So all of these things, as I said before, can be assembled to form a synergistic, beneficial message that's consistent. So we ask you, if you had the money, what would you do? Let me refer you back to accountability, responsibility, and open forum on finance. Once we get the money, did we do what we said we were going to do? It'd be great to tell people. It'd be great 6 months or a year down the road to say we did or we didn't get there, but here's what did happen, what we were able to do with our programs, and here's where we want to go next. So next year when you do your annual commitment, whether it's a full kind of program or not, we got here, here's our next step. Here's our point B. Here's where we're going. Come with us. Be part of this great community and who we are. A couple of other examples of that. St. Teresa in Somerville, South Carolina did this kind of a program. They spent several years doing 7 steps for financial giving, training people in their own personal finances before they embarked on anything that was a bigger program at the parish. But they found themselves outgrowing their facilities, like so many parishes are. In addition to the story they put together, and they redid their envelopes, they redid their website, they did their increased offertory, they put the story together, they put people in the parking lot to walk you into Mass. It's a nice touch. I think most people would like that. Some might run, but I think most people would like it. And their result, and what they celebrated, was they were going to lose their associate pastor. Their associate pastor was everything for the youth program. So the impact was that they would have not had a youth program. Instead, they were able to expand it as a result. Wonderful story. And the pastor, the associate pastor, is there and conducting the other programs, which of course is important in terms of availability of Mass and confession and other ministry work. So one story. Another example, this church focused primarily on buildings. We're asking them what their next step is. But again, website, envelope, their increased offertory program. Celebrate your parish. Think about who you are. Think about the impact you have and how you're telling people. We were in Connecticut visiting, and there was one nighttime visit that we were waiting for a finance council, and there was a knock at the door of the sacristy. And Father went to the door, and he came back a little bit later, and we only overheard, but what it turned out to be was that it was a woman in need. She was unable to pay her gas bill, and Father had just given her money to go pay that gas bill. I'm sure that no one else in that parish knows about that. But to me, what a wonderful, generous act to be kind and benevolent. I'm thinking about actually Bishop's talk yesterday at Mass, the merciful act. Even that kind of simple thing, we have so much of it happening and we lose it. I come to Mass on Sunday. Do I know that happened? No. Is that necessarily the thing I would pick out to talk about? Maybe not. But it was just, to me, it was touching. It was an example of the kind of thing that happens and it goes, and we just sort of assume that people are going to, know it happens. So, branding is nice and important, so we like the idea of branding, but this is not branding that we're talking about. This is mission, and how do you describe your mission? And even if you don't have a parish mission, who are you as a community? And then create the schedule and put your pieces together. I'm referring back to communication, the point that Chuck Zeck makes, and it's also in the bishop's pastoral letter about communicating. So this is not rocket science. It's just a little bit of somewhat of a program to go through that you can put together yourselves. I mentioned that we think engagement opens that door to discipleship. It doesn't mean we should stop forming and absolutely continue doing that at the same time. But meanwhile, let's have a lot of fun about who we are and how great we are as parish organizations and the wonderful things we do. We see such great things happening across the country. So connect that financial giving to spirituality. Help people make that connection about the impact of what they can do, and give them a part in setting the direction of the parish, as many as possible. Keep them informed. Tell your wonderful story. Celebrate who you are. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.